Worldcom Incorporated executives Scott D. Sullivan and David F. Myers were charged with 7 counts of securities fraud.
Worldcom, a telecom giant destroyed by a massive accounting fraud. At the heart of the fraud, Controller David Myers, a former Ernst & Young senior manager.
Any one of us could be put in those situations.
He's a former employee. It could be me.
I was shocked.
Mr. Myers was a reluctant participant in the events that have led us here today.
But if you're not careful, things could turn out the wrong way.
He looked like a regular guy.
If it could happen to him, it could happen to you.
What led Myers to participate in the fraud, and what can we learn about doing the right thing from his example? Find out in this special ethics and compliance presentation.
Hello, I'm Steve Howe, America's Area Managing Partner. The story of Worldcom underscores the importance of personal responsibility and of always making the right ethical choices. At Ernst & Young, our values are the basis for all of our actions. By reflecting our values in the choices you make and following our code of conduct, you send a clear message about our commitment to ethical behavior. And you contribute in a very real way to building the reputation of Ernst & Young. In a broader sense, all of you help build confidence in our profession and the public's trust in our capital markets. Recently, Jeff Hoops, our America's Ethics and Compliance Officer, sat down with David Myers to speak with him about his role in the Worldcom fraud. As you'll see, Myers' story shows that none of us really know how we will react under pressure. It also shows how one small compromise can lead down a slippery slope. In these difficult economic times, your clients may be under more pressure than ever before to meet their earnings targets. That means you may come under pressure as well. I want you to remember that our firm will always support you in making the right choices and doing the right thing. I hope you'll continue to consult with one another and always be confident that no matter what happens, nothing is more important than your own personal integrity and commitment to the highest ethical standards.
Hello, I'm Jeff Hoops, America's Ethics and Compliance Officer. One of the largest accounting frauds in U.S. history occurred at a company called Worldcom. Between 1999 and 2002, Worldcom overstated its pre-tax income by more than $5 billion. The overstatement was caused by aggressively and ultimately fraudulently reducing reserves and fraudulently capitalizing operating expenses. This Wall Street high flyer ultimately declared bankruptcy. Its stock became worthless. 17,000 people lost their jobs and their pensions. Investors lost billions. The principal players in this fraud all went to jail, including the CEO, Bernie Ebbers, the CFO, Scott Sullivan, and the controller, David Myers. By way of background, Myers worked for Ernst & Young for about 11 years before he left as a senior manager to work for a private company and eventually for Worldcom. For a variety of reasons, Worldcom found it could not meet its financial projections and Wall Street's expectations in the fourth quarter of 1999. Here's an excerpt from my interview in which Myers describes a conversation he had with CFO Scott Sullivan about the financial results.
In the third or fourth quarter of 1999, I personally brought financial statements in to Scott and showed him a margin that was, in Scott's words, completely unacceptable. And his exact words were that we had completely, well, these aren't his exact words, that we had screwed up, that we had made a mistake, and to take the financial statements, he wasn't even going to keep them, they were wrong. So, I knew they weren't, but I didn't, at that point in time, didn't know enough facts about it to be able to tell him that he was wrong, so I took the financial statements back. We reworked the entire quarter and came back to basically the same number. So when I took those back to Scott, again, his response was, this is so far off where we had told the public market we're going to be, we can't do this. There must be a mistake. There has to be a mistake. Scott's probably the brightest person I've ever met in my life, from a financial perspective or almost any perspective. And when someone that you respect from an intelligence perspective, I mean, there's obviously a lot of loyalty and everything else. When he says that he knows for a fact that the information that you're providing is wrong, that you've made a mistake, you assume, or I assumed that we had made a mistake. And so we went back and reworked the numbers again, coming back to, for all intents and purposes, the same number. All of this time frame, we're a public company. Public company is about to release its quarterly earnings, and so the time frame to release your earnings is set. The time that we're at this point playing, trying to figure out what's wrong, is we're creeping closer and closer to the time we have to release our earnings. So Scott actually tells me, I know the numbers are wrong, I know what they should be, we need to book an entry to get where I know we should be, and then we'll figure out what the error is at the end of the quarter, and the next quarter is going to be just the same error, but the opposite direction. The two will wipe out each other, and everything will be fine, but you need to produce an entry this quarter to fix the problem that I know is there. And that was the real pressure that the accounting department was put under, was producing an entry that was based on the CFO's thought process of what he thought the number should be, as opposed to what we knew the underlying answer was.
He knew, based on what he had discovered in the financial data, that they were having problems. And I think that if you find something like that, you need to just let it out. Don't let someone, even if there's pressure, if they're your superior, saying, I think this is wrong. I mean, show me the evidence.
He was sort of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. I mean, it was a conflict of what he was taught to do, which is sort of respect your bosses, and he clearly had a strong respect for Scott. And on the other hand, he was probably conflicted because internally he had a moral check, which sort of said, maybe I shouldn't follow these orders.
I would have stopped and realized that in order for me to make a wise decision, then I would have needed to consult with others.
He should have talked to somebody else, like a third party, to get a sort of unbiased or independent opinion as to, here's what I'm doing, is this right? And ask those questions. And coming from a background that he has, being with an accounting firm for about 11 years, should have prompted him to ask those questions.
The expected turnaround in the numbers never happened. The problem was not the accounting, it was Worldcom's weakening business. In our next excerpt, Myers described what happens 2 quarters later when he realized that there was no accounting mistake and that the first reserve release was now a real problem.
The third quarter, it had happened twice. The first one, I honestly believe that we had made a mistake. I didn't know how, but Scott convinced me that there was just an error. The second was, well, we now think we know what the error is, and we're going to try to fix it. So we're going to make the adjustment twice. Not comfortable doing it, but again, we're not doing anything that is considered criminal or fraudulent. It's just not good accounting. And we could probably be called to task, and we should have disclosed, been more open in our disclosure. The third quarter, when there really was, in my opinion, nothing in the future that was going to change what the situation was, and we were still fixing it. We were preparing at that point in time. In my opinion, it had sort of moved past being aggressive accounting into this is wrong. And then the entire pressures that come about you is at what point in this linear equation was I really wrong? So this is the third time I'm going to do this. Is it the first time that it's wrong? Or this is the first time that I did it 2 quarters ago? Was that wrong? And so all of a sudden you've stepped off onto a slope that you're halfway down the mountain and you didn't even know that you're on the mountain. So then it was sort of a survival. What do we do? Well, you got to sort of keep doing what you're doing, or you got to raise the flag that there's something completely amiss, and then what are the consequences of that? I mean, it was a moral and ethical dilemma that you were facing, and nothing had prepared you to deal with the kind of pressures that you were currently under.
He really gets into the third quarter where he realizes that something is really not right here. And at that time, he should have said something to the CFO or the audit committee or the internal audit department that we've done something wrong, something's not right here, and we need to correct it.
There's a certain element of shock, like, is my superior really asking me to stand behind numbers which don't exist and do not tie to the financial statements and the numbers? Like, how do you deal with that? And I think it's an element of self-confidence that you really have to develop. And as you learn, and if you're in that kind of position, you should theoretically develop that as you go. You have your moral instincts, and you should follow them at all times.
You knew it was wrong, and if you know something is wrong, that's where you feel like you should challenge even more, because if you know the facts and it's all leading to the wrong answer, he's got to challenge them.
You just have to follow your own instinct. Sometimes that just has to rule out what others are trying to pressure you to do.
Unfortunately, the fraud didn't stop there. Eventually, Worldcom ran out of reserves to release. The accounting department, under pressure from Scott Sullivan, decided to capitalize operating expenses. The fraud was eventually uncovered by Worldcom's internal auditor, Cynthia Cooper. Myers subsequently pleaded guilty and spent a year in prison. Scott Sullivan also pleaded guilty and is currently serving a 5-year sentence. Bernie Ebbers was convicted at trial and is spending 25 years in prison. Some of the more junior members of the accounting department also served up to a year in prison. There are many important lessons that can be learned from the Worldcom fraud. Here's Myers describing his life after Cynthia Cooper confronted him with the fraud.
Well, at that particular point in time, the weight was lifted off my shoulders, because I had lived at that point for better part of a year, where every waking moment and every thought somehow found its way back to the things that were going on and, what could possibly happen. And then at that point, when Cynthia asked the question, I never fast forwarded through the entire process to know that I would be indicted and that I would spend literally thousands of hours being interviewed by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office here in the Southern District of New York, that I would plead guilty, that and for the even the most humiliating parts were when I was actually indicted and brought to court, literally in handcuffs, in front of effectively the entire world, and even worse, my family. But I never thought that what we were doing was criminal. I thought what we were doing was very aggressive and wrong, but I'd never seen an accountant go to jail. I was doing what my boss told me to do and my boss's boss told me to do. It has been a troubling time since, and again, the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that if another person is put in that situation, that maybe they fast forward through. What is the results? What are the consequences of the actions that I'm about to embark upon? And because I could have never told you that this would have been the result of the way that it started out as being something that I honestly thought was aggressive, then it became a little bit more aggressive, then it became more aggressive, then it became wrong, and at some point in time it became criminal. And so what I would say is that, once you make a mistake, if you make another mistake that only adds on top of it, it compounds the problem. What I should have done from the very beginning was I should not have continued following up on the instructions that I was being asked to follow, and I should have followed my own thoughts, my own morals, my own ethics. And for those things, I'm completely remorseful and whatever else. I can't believe that I did what I did. But in the process of doing it, I was able to rationalize why what I was doing was the right thing for the company, because my boss was asking me to do it, and he convinced me that I was doing what I knew to be wrong. He said, you need to do that for the best interest of the company. And I should have known that that was not the case. For me in particular, I went through life and did all the things that many of the people that now are with Ernst & Young have done. Went through college, made, great grades, was in an accounting honorary, did all the things that you should do, never had a problem in life. So when you look at, where I am today and where some of the people that are in their first years or their first 5 years or whatever it's accounting, I was exactly that person. So I guess the question that I ask myself is how do bad things happen to good people? Don't know that I'm actually that good a person, but bad things definitely happened. And one of the things I'll tell you is that as human beings, when pressure is applied to a human being, you never know what the outcome is going to be. And so I would continually be mindful and making sure that what you're doing is you live up to your own ethics and your own morals, and you don't ever allow anyone else's ethics or morals to override your own. And at the end of the day, is what you're being asked to do, is it something that you're comfortable at doing? Or are you doing it because you think you owe it to someone else? Now, I think that you need to be loyal to your employer. You need to be doing those kind of things, but you can take that over, to a step that's unhealthy, and that's what happened with me. And you need to watch individuals that are like me in that they are pleasers. Anybody that wants to, and including yourself. I mean, if what you're trying to do is make sure that at the end of the day, you're trying to make sure everybody else is pleased with the things that you do, you allow yourselves to do things that maybe you shouldn't be doing. So again, keep grounded, make sure that your morals and your ethics are yours, and stick by them.
For many reasons, some of us choose to obey the boss blindly, but I think that that's not what we're taught here. We're taught to think critically, to ask questions. Professional skepticism is very high on our list.
That inner voice always tells you to question things, to question everything. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Is this happening for the right reason? Is this happening for the wrong reason? That is kind of our moral guiding compass, our ethical compass that I think will help us point the way as to whether something's right or wrong.
We've got to recognize that even the people that we're friendly with, that we believe are above board and live, do the right thing all the time, even those people could commit errors or fraud.
Our clients are experiencing pressure to meet earnings targets, and they are experiencing difficulties in meeting sales targets. And I think that in this environment, we need to be increasingly aware that they may feel pressure from their superiors to do something that is not right.
It's difficult in terms of to know when to reach out. And I think any time that you sort of pause and you question your own moral instincts and you say, is this right? Should I be doing this? I think that's a safe bet. I think it's wiser to ask more than to ask less.
The best thing we have for us at Ernst & Young here is our network of people. It's really important for myself and my peers and my colleagues to leverage off our network of all our individuals that we have in this firm.
We would also have consultation with our partner, our independent review partner. There's also the PPD network to consult.
And then also the EY ethics hotline. Whether you want to say who you are or be anonymous, that there's so many people here at Ernst & Young that you can go to if you have questions or need help about anything.
I think as a firm we do an excellent job of making resources available to people and putting them in situations where they can make a difference and they can speak out. And so I'm very proud of the firm for that.
We all make occasional mistakes in judgment. What's essential is not to make a second mistake trying to fix the first one. Like David Myers, you could find yourself halfway down the mountain before you even realize you're on a slippery slope. Always remember that Ernst & Young has a strong culture of consultation. If something does not seem right to you, it's your obligation to consult with your colleagues and your leaders. You can talk to the leader of your engagement team, your office or sub-area. Call me or one of my colleagues in the Office of Ethics and Compliance, or use the ethics hotline. Our culture of consultation can help you get to the right answer. Collectively, we are stronger and smarter than any one of us. And remember, no one in this firm has ever gotten into trouble for consulting too much. Thank you for watching and for all your dedication to doing the right thing.